It's Mav here, your friendly community marketing manager. I'm going to be today's host for the AMA. As you're all aware, I'm sure, this is about the Redstone protocol upgrade. And a little bit of housekeeping to get out of the way here first. I believe this is the first time we've hosted this on Discord, which is exciting. And being an AMA, of course, that stands for Ask Me Anything. So we will have time for questions from the audience. I could ask you to drop them in the general channel, and I'll do my best to get through to them at the end. I do have a few questions to start off with that I'll ask the development team. And then later on, as time permits, we'll get to questions from the general channel. And just like the community call early in the week, we will be recording. So the audio is going to be posted up over YouTube, probably over the weekend. And just one final disclaimer in that anything said here today does not constitute financial advice. Please, as always, do your own research, take all the appropriate security precautions. And if you have questions about anything that's being discussed here, do reach out in Discord for assistance. And with that out of the way and a few more people filtering in, we can get started, I think. Well, for me, I think the name Redstone kind of could highlight a bit of a generation gap depending on what kind of comes to mind when you first hear it. And certainly if you Google Redstone, the first result that pops up is probably going to be something about Minecraft, which I really don't have any idea about. But if you are an old person like me, you'll probably associate Redstone with spaceflight. It was actually the first. It was the first rocket. Well, it launched the Western world's first satellite, which was called Explorer 1, and it was just a few months after Soviet Union surprised everyone by getting their Sputnik probe up first. And in addition, the Redstone rocket, I learned just recently, it launched Australia's first satellite, which was about 9 years later. So definitely a great name for what is a very important upgrade to the rocket pool protocol. It's going to provide a foundation for a lot of future advancements, which is very exciting. And there is a Medium article available if you'd like to read through that. It covers off some of these topics that we're going to chat about today. But in case anyone in the audience hasn't had the chance to read through, perhaps we can start off with a bit of a high-level overview. Open question to anyone who wants to pick this one up. But maybe we can start off by sharing exactly what is the objective of Redstone. So we'll get into the individual components later on and what they mean. But maybe Dave or Langers, you could share some of the thought process behind Redstone, exactly why it's so important, and yeah, why we should all be paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, I can take this. So the idea behind Redstone is primarily to be prepared for the merge. So the merge brings in some changes, some really exciting changes, and some exciting capabilities for Ethereum validators. So it's really just to kind of capture that, but also there was like a big component of it is around quality of life for node operators and profitability for node operators. So one of the big pain points we have with Rocket Pool today is the fact that RPL claims are actually quite, or can be, at the moment gas is quite cheap, but they can be quite expensive. So we had a big push to improve that situation. And this is kind of important for a number of different reasons. First of all, the profitability for node operators, but also to allow support for people who are having less RPL collateral as well. So it gives a better support for those people as well, or better access for those people as well, so that RPL claims aren't too expensive. So yeah, there's a lot to kind of unpack around that, but the overall themes are the merge and kind of quality of life for node operators.
Well, that definitely sounds like a big deal. So, how long exactly has the team been working on Redstone? There's clearly a few different components. So, imagining to tie all of them together is not a quick process. It's been a few months in the works, has it?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. So pretty much not long after launch, we kind of started the kind of design process, ideation and design prioritization. There's a kind of a lot that goes on at the beginning, and actually the whole way through, really. So yeah, I would say that we kind of did different parts of it, different components at different times, but we've essentially been working on it since not long after we launched.
Yeah, let me throw something in real quick. You mentioned that there's a bunch of different parts. So I believe it was yesterday or today was the first anniversary of the idea of the smoothing pool. When we were working
Yay!
on the main launch stuff last year, Langers and I spent a lot of time discussing ideas back and forth and trying to break them essentially and coming up with what would work and what wouldn't. And Langers came up with this idea of, as far as incentivization for Rocket Pool goes, of having this pool where everybody could add their priority fees and their MEV and stuff like that. And so that idea has been around for about a year now, since the inauguration of the 0x02 proposal and the research repository. And now it's finally coming to life, and I am so happy that it's there.
I can't take full credit. I did. It was inspired by something that Flashbots kind of put together as well. But yeah, it's kind of it's really good to kind of we had a big session around MEV when MEV started to really come to the fore, and we were certainly looking at how we would handle MEV, and the smoothing pool was a really exciting incentive and feature of Rocket Pool that we could add that kind of is on the incentivization end of of things rather than the penalty end of things. So it was really good to kind of have that in place and to develop over time.
Well, I guess considering that it has been a year past that anniversary, the fact that there was a pretty smooth deployment on Goerli testnet earlier this week kind of speaks to all the work and testing that's gone into Redstone. So it may not have been so relevant to everyone in the audience, the deployment on testnet, as in not impacting them directly, but obviously, a great step towards mainnet deployment. So did that event go to plan, or were there any hiccups? Seemed to be pretty smooth from my perspective, but you never know behind the scenes.
I would say it was relatively smooth. The thing is, with every testnet, you learn more, and it's and with actually this one we made a few changes at the very last minute, so we're kind of adjusting to that as well. Great changes. That was actually a 35 views in the audience as well. So kind of in concert with in collaboration with the community around those changes. So yeah, I think with every testnet is an opportunity to learn, and it certainly was smooth. But yes, we learn every time we deploy it.
Right, and then in terms of next steps, where to hear from Redstone? What's the next step in the development?
So we've got some testing on Goerli to do to make sure everything's going well, and this is important testing because it introduces a lot more. So we've tested Redstone on Kiln and Ropsten at the moment. So we've done 2 testnet releases of Redstone so far, and but Goerli is the bigger kind of one because we have more beta testers on Goerli, and it's kind of our official testnet. So that's where we need everyone's help to kind of test it out send us bug reports, all of the sort of thing, and make sure everything is working correctly. Particularly, Ethereum is tricky in the sense that, particularly with the merge, there's a lot of different configurations, and so that's what Goerli helps us with as well, is to test out those different configurations and make sure all of those things are kind of working. So that's it's going through. So essentially, it's going through that testing, and then the merge, the actual Goerli merge, will happen. And now on I think it's the 11th of August. And so we're kind of preparing for that. So the next thing that will happen is the client teams will release their final client releases for the Goerli merge. And so we will incorporate those into the smart node stack, release that to lots of fanfare so that everyone can upgrade. And then we will see it transition into the merge. And then all of the kind of some of the new features will be, so the new reward system is currently running at the moment on Goerli, so that's all active now from when we released it. But the new merge features obviously won't be until the actual merge happens. So we'll kind of watch it transition into the merge, and then we'll watch how those new features behave once they're kind of live as well. So there's kind of more testing after that, and then we start into kind of mainnet prep and all that sort of thing. Although there'll probably be a bit of overlap between the two.
Okay, so speaking of mainnet, would we expect to see Redstone go live before or at the same time as the merge?
So very similar to what we've done with Goerli, it will be released before the merge. So it has to actually. So we have to release before the merge happens. So that's what we're planning on, and more information will be coming out very soon, like next week, around what happens with that. So so we'll be deploying our contracts before the merge, turning everything on, and it'll be probably a couple of weeks before the merge, and then the merge will happen, and then everything else will turn on. It's pretty much exactly the same as what we're doing with Goerli. Goerli is our kind of dress rehearsal, so we're kind of going through and doing it as we would do for mainnet.
Okay, so that's good to know and important for everyone in the audience to take note of, that in terms of big dates coming up in the future, it's not just the merge, there's also going to be Redstone on mainnet, so keep an eye out for that announcement coming soon. And I think with that out of the way, we can move on to discussing a few of the Redstone features in more detail. Just a reminder for anyone in the audience listening, if you do have a question, please feel free to drop it in the general channel. I'll do my best to get through any questions in trading as well, but it would help if you could drop it in general. So the specifics of Redstone. One thing right now, if someone wants to claim RPL rewards, it can be expensive depending on what gas is doing. And we've heard that there's a new reward system coming out with Redstone, and that will increase the efficiency of claims. And I think because of that, it's going to be a very exciting development, something people are looking forward to. So perhaps two parts to this topic. The first one would be what work has been done to enable this change? How is it so much more efficient? And then the second topic leading on from that would be, is there anything that mini pool operators need to know about it? Is there going to be any change on the front end, or is it just something that happens behind the scenes automatically and they don't need to be too concerned about that?
I can answer that one if you like.
Yep, go for it.
So the current reward system is quite gas intensive because most of the work to calculate the rewards that each person receives is done on chain, and there's a lot of storing different variables and lots of reading different variables to calculate that, and doing that on chain is quite inefficient. Every time you store data on chain, that's the most expensive operation you can perform. So we've devised a new system which takes most of that processing off of the contracts which are done on chain and puts it into the hands of the Oracle DAO. So a lot of that calculation now, all of that calculation now happens off chain, where it doesn't cost gas to perform, and the results of that are encoded in what's called a Merkle tree, which is just a really efficient way of storing a lot of data on chain. We just each reward period has a single what's called a Merkle root, which is all the data in the Merkle tree just gets all encoded into this single value which gets stored on chain. And then in order to claim, each user just has to submit a proof that that their claim exists within that Merkle tree, and it's just this cryptographical data structure which is really efficient to store on chain. So it takes all of that gas that was used to do that all on chain and takes that off chain. So it's a lot more efficient in terms of the gas used. On top of that, we also remove a lot of the limitations of the old system. So previously, you had to call claim within the claim period in order to claim your rewards for that period. Whereas with this new system, you can leave it for multiple periods and then do a bulk claim. So you can wait 2 or 3, 4 periods or whatever, and then just do a bulk claim, which saves on a lot of gas as well. So in terms of the second question of whether that changes from a user's perspective, yes. The previous system or the current system requires an auto claiming or manually claiming every period. If you didn't claim within the period, you would miss out on the rewards for that period. This new system doesn't have that limitation, so we no longer have a auto claim system. You have to manually jump on there and do your claim, but you're not limited to when you have to do that. So you can do that every quarter or every 6 months or however frequently you prefer to do it. And in fact, the longer you wait, the more gas efficient it is as well. So you can choose to just do it every 6 months, do it every 12 months, whatever works for you. The other improvement in that system is previously, in order to compound your stake, so to claim your rewards and then stake those rewards back in to compound, that would require multiple transactions as well. You'd have to do that every interval as well. Now you can do that in a single stake and claim transaction, and similar to the other just claiming, you can also wait multiple periods and stake and claim multiple periods at once. So all those things together result in a much more cost-effective reward system.
Okay, great. So that's certainly something to take note of. There's no need to go in every period and claim your rewards if that's a change you'd like to make. And I guess, yeah, good to know that at least Ethereum gas is getting cheaper. If not the gas that we have to put in to fill up our cars. So another topic, somewhat related, if I deposited ETH today to receive rETH, there's that little bit of a delay, right? 24 hours. And the objective here is to provide that defense against sandwiching attacks. And probably 3 parts here to this question. First of all, for context, maybe we could touch on the exact risk right now. So if this lock wasn't a feature, how would these sandwiching attacks affect people?
I can answer that one again. So the main issue there is because every day we submit the new balances to the chain, because the current limitation is that the beacon chain state is available to the EVM, so we can't know on the execution layer what the balances of the the consensus layer are. So to resolve that, that's one of the prime reasons that the Oracle DAO exists. Every day it submits the the balances of all of our validators to the execution layer so that we have that available on chain to calculate the Ethereum, the rETH to Ethereum exchange rate. So the exploit would be that you could monitor transaction which updates the state because it happens at a known time every day, every 24 hours. You could monitor for that transaction, and you can do a sandwich tax. Buy rETH, or you deposit rETH into the pool for the transaction, and then after the transaction applies the new rETH exchange rate, which will make the rETH more valuable. Immediately after the transaction, then burn the rETH back to ETH, and you could essentially steal the increase in value that rETH has for that day. So we included a 24-hour delay of burning so that a sandwich attack of that nature couldn't be executed. If you deposit it into the deposit pool, you couldn't immediately then burn. You'd have to wait the 24 hours. So we initially had that protection in place. But then in the Redstone upgrades where we changed that, so instead of a 24-hour delay, we just impose a 24-hour of rewards deposit fee on depositing into the deposit pool. So that means that attack could no longer be performed because you deposit rETH before the transaction, 1 day's worth of rewards behind, so then burning the rETH after exchange rate changes doesn't yield any positive result. So what that does, that allows us to be easier to integrate in with other DeFi protocols because that 24-hour delay is a bit of a restriction on integrating with other protocols. They might expect to be able to deposit into the deposit pool and then immediately move that rETH around. But we had that limit, added a bit of friction for integrating some other protocols. So changing it up and doing it this way allows us to integrate better.
Okay, yeah, that all makes sense. And yeah, you answered part 2 and part 3 well there.
Sorry.
So yeah, I was going to ask how exactly it enables the lock to be removed, and then the implications in terms of working with third parties, which is certainly something that that people may be interested about. I don't know. Heard a bit of a chatter about possible integrations going forwards, and yeah, this shift with Redstone will certainly enable this, as you mentioned.
And can I also just point out that this idea was actually from our community, from Noshima, so props to coming up with that idea and that's in this summary.
Awesome. So from something that the community has obviously been very interested about and very helpful to perhaps another improvement that's a little bit more obscure, may not be immediately apparent to everyone what the relevance is, but maybe we can chat about the stake on behalf functionality. So I think usually the idea of getting someone to do something on your behalf sounds like it might be a little bit risky if you don't trust them, maybe even a little bit centralized, but I'm sure that there's a use case for this functionality. It may not be immediately apparent, but someone could share a bit of background on this enhancement. That'd be great.
Yeah, I can probably do that. So it's actually, it's kind of a quality. Well, there's two aspects to it actually. There's a quality of life thing. So first of all, as a node operator, you may not always kind of have RPL on your node address, and in fact, like at the moment to stake RPL, you need to send it to your node address first, which is kind of one extra step that we were trying to kind of iron out. Now that the reward system doesn't auto restake, it's kind of less of a problem, but it's certainly still a problem that you want to be able to stake RPL from an address that's not your node address. So it just kind of streamlines that process and makes that a lot easier. So that's the first thing. It's kind of like a quality of life thing. The other aspect is that it does kind of help to give other. So there's obviously some interest around kind of people getting together and co-funding a node, and this does actually kind of facilitate that slightly. So it means that you can so as an RPL holder, you could stake on behalf of somebody else. It does mean that the withdrawal address has to be set to like a splitter contract, but that is kind of one way that you could do it. The better alternative to this is to wait for the staking as a service stuff to come out. That kind of solves that completely. But this is a kind of an intermediary step that could support that kind of model as well.
And just on the comment of not wanting someone to do something on your behalf, it's not really them doing something on your behalf. I mean, it's the equivalent of them sending ETH or RPL to your address. You can't stake someone else's RPL for them, staking RPL in account for them. So it's not really doing something on behalf of someone. It's, if you were to do it to someone, it would be equivalent of sending them RPL.
Yeah, you can send RPL to my address anytime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's not really like doing an action on their behalf that they like. You couldn't use it to grieve someone unless you consider giving you RPL.
All right, good to know. And perhaps the most important question that we asked today, is it MEV or MEV?
I say MEV.
Isn't that where Maverick comes from? I mean, Maverick.
Yeah,
I can't believe you've done this.
I did see a couple of people making fun of my accent in the audience, which is understandable. I'm surprised I haven't got more flack from the team, to be honest. I'd say there's a good chance that over time, being surrounded by Australians, my accent will start to go back towards a bit of half and half, which actually did start to happen after living in Sydney for 2 years. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, MEV, whatever we want to call it. It's obviously pretty big development, and that's going to come in with the merge. So maybe we can talk about this in two parts. First of all, what exactly is it? And second of all, related to Redstone, how does the protocol upgrade handle this in terms of the distribution of priority fees?
I can probably take the what is it, and then maybe I'll defer to Joe, but Joe might defer back to me in a minute around how.
No,
it's
I'm happy to field it, but
yeah. All right,
Nope, go ahead.
okay, cool. All right, awesome. No, MEV, I can do the stock standard MEV definition. So MEV is maximal extractable value. Although to be fair, I prefer the other term for it, which is minor extractable value. But it's essentially the value that a block builder can earn by shuffling around the ordering of the transactions. Now, Flashbots is kind of one of the bigger names out there in terms of MEV platforms. It allows people to submit these kind of transaction bundles that mean that you can kind of order the transactions or put it in a particular place in the block. So that way, there's a lot of things you can do with MEV. Some of them are really good, some of them are not so good. But it is a kind of a fact of life that MEV exists. MEV exists both in the TradFi world and it exists in our space as well. Anytime you have a system where someone can order transactions, you're going to get this sort of situation. So we have to kind of be aware of it. From a Rocket Pool's perspective, it's actually quite important because other staking providers, and particularly liquid staking providers, will be incorporating MEV returns within their liquid staking token. So to be competitive, we also have to do that. Plus, also, it is good revenue for node operators as well, to be able to kind of capture that as well. So one of the things that we're integrating is MEV Boost, which is Flashbot's kind of component. And I've probably gone a little bit further than I was supposed to. But Joe, do you want to take the rest?
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolving field in terms of implementation, but I can certainly talk about how it's well, we'll say how it's planned on being used, and then I can talk a little bit about sort of the state of it today, and stop me if I go too far with that. But essentially, how it's planning on being used is Langer's mentioned this notion of like this MEV boost thing from Flashbots, and that's kind of the first implementation we're rallying behind. So I'll say Rocket Pool as an entity is not married to one particular provider of MEV, because that's how it's pronounced. They just happen to be the first ones that can provide it in a way that we can consume easily without having to deal with too many permissionless shenanigans. So essentially what we do now, and this started with version 1.5 beta 2, which was released a little while ago. That version has a kind of test, like a prototype version of the MEV Boost container that Flashbots built, which is sort of their software bundle that can hook directly into the consensus client you provide. Obviously, I can only automatically configure it for Docker mode if the smart node manages your consensus client for you. If you're doing a hybrid thing and have your own external consensus client, you got to do it yourself. But we'll try to write up some documentation that describes like what that process looks like. And the Flashbots guys already have some pretty good documentation we can refer to get more down in the weeds. But essentially, the smart node, at least beta 2, out of the box, has MEV Boost in it, and the configuration for Teku, for Prism, and for Lighthouse is all there, so any of those clients can leverage it. Nimbus isn't done yet. Nimbus is working on it. It's actively in development. They're going to get there soon, but they're not ready for it yet, so I haven't included that one. But the other ones can take advantage of it. So if you go onto Ropsten today, on the Ropsten testnet, you grab 1.5 and go onto that network. You can try out MEV Boost with your consensus client, and every time you propose a block, instead of proposing a normal block, you propose one of their blocks. They'll give you one that has the transactions and stuff already ordered. You sign it, you propose it, and you get both the priority fees and the actual MEV rewards. I'm triggering so many people when I say that. It's amazing. So that's the theory, right? The theory is essentially that's done. We bundle it with the smart node. It all kind of works under the hood. If you're a hybrid user, you've got to configure it yourself. That's all well and good. The practice is it is very much actively in development. And as far as I understand, we learned today that there may be a little bit of some discussion between the Flashbots providers and the core devs, and they're asking Flashbots to kind of hold off on enabling MEV Boost until after the merge is kind of solidified and confirmed and the merge block has been finalized and everything looks good to go, and then they can enable it afterwards. So it's early enough in development, and with that new thing kind of coming into play, my suspicion is we may follow suit, and we may simply disable it for a little bit during the actual merge process until everybody declares it to be safe to turn on, and then we can do so. And that'll probably come through like another smart node release. I'll do a patch version or something that just has a variable turned on. Maybe I'll make it a 2e setting or something like that. But for the start of it, it's looking like it's probably not going to be enabled by default just because there are so many variables in the air, and the merge is already going to be complex enough. How's that, Langers? Is that okay as far as revealing the details?
That's perfect. Absolutely
outstanding. Perfect. All right.
Thanks, Joe. Or your new name is now JOE. Sorry to hear the bearer of sad news.
I regret nothing. I want you all to know that.
And speaking of insightful commentary and questions in the chat, I haven't seen a whole lot come through. And by that, I mean nothing, but perhaps that just goes to show how great of a job you're all doing at explaining everything about Redstone. In any case, final reminder to throw up some questions if you have any, but we can move on to perhaps what might be the final point. I think a lot of these upgrades are somewhat automatic, right? In the sense that they improve that user experience, improve parts of the protocol. There's not a whole lot that's necessarily required from users. And perhaps with the rewards claim, there's a decision to be made there, whether you want to wait and claim 6 months or a year or whatever the case may be. But there's certainly one enhancement that is going to be pretty big and important question, something that everyone has to decide, and that is, of course, the smoothing pool. And there's been quite a bit of discussion in the community already about the conditions under which it would make sense if you're running a mini pool or mini pools to join in the smoothing pool. So first of all, we can cover off quickly what exactly smoothing pool does, and then maybe as a follow-up to that, we could chat about the different factors that someone should consider when they're having a think about whether to jump in the pool or not.
Good job.
Joe, do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, the smoothie pool's kind of been my baby for a little while, so I'm happy to answer anything about it. Where do you want to start, Mev?
Let's start with a high-level overview. If by any chance there's anyone in the audience who is not sure what exactly it is.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect looking through the audience now, the bulk of them are regulars, and so most people probably know. But for the sake of sharing and things, at a high-level overview, essentially, the smoothing pool is a special feature that's part of Redstone that allows people. It's an opt-in feature. I'll say that first and foremost, just to dispel any confusion. It is an optional feature you can elect into if you so desire, that allows Rocket Pool node operators to collectively kind of pool all of the priority fees and the MEV rewards that they get during proposals together into one single contract. And that at the end of a rewards period, like a traditional RPL rewards period that happens every 28 days, the smoothing pool's balance is snapshotted and distributed evenly amongst all of the members of the smoothing pool. And it's prorated and weighted based on how long you've been in it. So if you just joined, you don't get full rewards. And it also looks at your attestation performance on the beacon chain. So if your validator is offline, you don't get any rewards either. If your validator is only on half the time, you only get half the rewards, that kind of thing. So it's weighted and tried to treat as fairly as possible based on how long you've been enrolled into this thing and how well your validator is doing. And it also takes your validators or your mini pool's commission rates, your fee, into consideration as well. So people with a higher fee get a higher percentage. But essentially, the goal of it is to reduce the overall variance that comes with being a proposer. Because as some people, shout out to A35U, have noticed, you can go for a very, very long time without getting any proposals on the beacon chain. Weeks, months, maybe even years, who knows? But you can last for a very long time. And as more validators get doctrinated into the chain, introduced into the chain, that gets even worse because your probability of proposing something goes down with every new validator. So the smoothing pool is a way to combat that by just letting everybody kind of pool their luck together into one spot. And so the idea is lots of little randomness happens all over the place, and the smoothing pool gives you this nice, relatively even set of rewards from all these validators. And as the number of Rocket Pool operators grows and the number of mini pools grows and more people opt into this, that smoothing factor only gets easier over time. So it's kind of analogous to like the way that a proof of work mining pool exists today, if you're familiar with the way that mining works, where you have lots of these people with like 1 or 2 graphics cards or whatever all collectively pooling their hash power together, and then they all get a even distribution of the rewards every so often, that kind of thing. So that's the smoothing pool.
Okay, follow-up question, probably the most important one. What is your favorite smoothie flavor?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm going to have to go with a blue raspberry on that one as my favorite. If I had to pick one flavor for the rest of my life, that would be it.
It does sound pretty good. I think
It's not
mine
bad.
would be mine would be some variation of berry. Raspberry's a good choice.
It is a flavor. Everyone is complaining about it's not being a flavor. It's a real flavor. You get raspberries, you make a smoothie, you blue dye it, and there's a blue raspberry smoothie. I swear this is a thing. I'm gonna go look it up at the end of this.
Blue raspberries. I've never heard of it.
Maybe it's an American thing. I don't know.
I've heard of it. I mean, it's clearly an abomination, but
All right, this call is officially over.
Actually, I am very conscious that we've kind of jumped to the smoothing pool, but we should probably talk about what happens if you don't opt into the smoothing pool. So opting into the smoothing pool is obviously optional. You can do that. There are definitely some strong reasons why you would want to do that. And I don't want to put Ken on the spot. I know he's around, but he's definitely doing a little bit of research on that to kind of communicate some of that stuff. So there's definitely some strong reasons to join the smoothing pool. But by default, what happens with your... So when you propose a block, you get the priority fees from that block, and that those fees, if you're opted into the smoothing pool, it goes to the smoothing pool. But if you're not opted into the smoothing pool, then what it actually does is it goes to a thing called a fee distributor contract, which is a Rocket Pool smart contract that is specific to your node. And this is quite important. So your consensus client is kind of configured to point to that address, and so the priority fees go to that address. And the fee distributor, as the kind of name suggests, distributes the fees between you as a node operator and rETH holders. So that's how kind of that split happens. And so a key thing about the fee distributor is it's just a kind of an address that gets these fees, and obviously you get those fees straight away. Like, you don't have to wait. It's not like the beacon chain where your stake is kind of locked until withdrawals. Priority fees get delivered in real time, as you propose blocks. So you'll kind of get this kind of revenue, or this money coming in. It'll go to this fee distributor address. Now, if you want to claim those fees, then there's basically a process where you just need to initialize the fee distributor. Okay, so what it actually does is it creates that smart contract at that address using some funky magic that Kane developed, so it creates a smart contract at that address and allowing you to kind of claim those funds. Creating that smart contract, you just need to do that once, and you can do that whenever you want. So you can actually let those funds build up over time if you want to, or you can, on day one, you can initialize your fee distributor and then start claiming kind of on a regular basis. So that's kind of how that works. The priority fees go to that address. If you want to claim them, then you initialize your fee distributor, and then you can start claiming those fees on an ongoing basis.
You did say it, but I just want to repeat important that you don't have to initialize it before funds start arriving in there. You can do that at any point. Wait and slow at some point in the future. After rewards have already started accruing address, you don't have to start receiving.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the only time you need to initialize your fee distributor is actually when you want to start claiming.
Correct.
Right,
And
I guess-
there's a command. All the commands are in the CLI, and we'll have some information on that as well. But they're just very simple commands that you just execute.
Okay, well, there are a few questions going through from the audience, so perhaps we can touch on a few of them now. The first and most important question we have is, you all got any more of that sub 1k ETH? I heard a pretty good tip, and this is definitely not financial advice, that Ropsten ETH might be the way to play the merge, but it's a very special type of ETH. So that may be something worth looking into if you're interested in a deal. Again, making this very clear, not financial advice. But in terms of more relevant questions, we've got a few through from Patches, and he obviously already knows all of the answers, but some great talking points for us to discuss. First up, can we explain a little bit about the new fallback paradigm for node operators, as it would be under Redstone?
Ooh, put me in, coach. I promise I'm not busy getting recipes for blue raspberry smoothies to prove their existence to everybody. Okay, so here's the deal with fallbacks. Right now, you can use a light client as a fallback for your execution layer, your execution client, which means you can use like Infura or Pocket or whatever. So if you need to bring Geth down to prune it, for example, you can hit up Pocket really quickly as a nice fallback, and that can take over for you temporarily while Geth is pruning. And then once Geth comes back online, your fallback kind of like falls silent and goes away. That's all well and good. Starting with the merge, that's not possible. And so we have opted to essentially make the 1.5 fallback system compliant with merge rules, so that by upgrading to 1.5, you are ready for the merge when you so see fit. What that means is, first things first, there are no more light clients, so Pocket and Infura can no longer be used by anybody. And second thing is, there is no such thing as a naked execution client. Basically, an execution client that lives by itself. The execution client and the consensus client now have to live together, one-to-one. There is some trickery you can do to have one consensus client drive multiple executions, but I'm ignoring that for now. For the sake of simplicity, you have to have one consensus client paired to one execution client, and that whole thing becomes your Ethereum node. So if you want to have a fallback after 1.5 and after the merge, that means you need to have an execution client and a consensus client ready to go. You need to have secondary ones, a backup. So the way that we encourage people to look at this for 1.5 post-merge, or post-Redstone at least, is you either want to stand up a second machine at home if you're a home staker that has an execution client and a consensus client kind of synced and ready to go. Doesn't have any wallet information, doesn't have any validator keys, it just has clients synced and ready to go. You want to stand that up as a backup, and then you can point your system to that as a fallback, that entire pair of things. Or if you can't stake a second machine at home because your ISP won't let you have bandwidth limitations or something like that, you can consider getting a second machine in the cloud. For example, it can be like a VPS provider or a cloud provider or something like that. And you can stand it up and keep it synced that way. It's more expensive, but it does, it's going to work because cloud providers will keep it up. So that's basically how fallbacks will work in a nutshell. And Patches says, the more we spread the gospel now, the less you have to do it retroactively. 100% true. So I mentioned yesterday, everybody needs to get off of light clients as quickly as they can. And the response I got was, meh, the merge is in like 2 months, I'll do it later. And that is not the correct response. If you're going to be standing up a second one of these nodes, yeah, sneaky ninja guy, I'm looking at you. If you are going to be standing up a backup client, you need to have it ready and tested and prepared for the merge, not after the merge. That is my advice.
Obviously, that is particularly important if you're using a light client such as Infura or Pocket for your primary. It is very important because you will need a dedicated execution client. You need to move that kind of in-house. In other words, you need to manage it rather than relying on Infura and Pocket. Very, very important.
Okay, you heard them. Did 2 or 3 of Patch's questions in one go. So there are a couple more here. One is about the auto claim of RPL rewards. Why won't I be able to?
I know what he's doing. Patches is
You tell
basically
me.
taking all of the questions that he's going to be fielding constantly in the support channel, and he's making me answer them now just so he can point to it and people know about it beforehand. Well played, Patches. Well played. All right. After Redstone, auto-claiming of rewards goes away. There is no more auto-claiming because there's no need for auto-claiming. Because of the way it works now, where it's a true snapshot, they never get diluted, they never disappear. It's not one of these like you have to claim every 28 days or you forfeit those rewards forever. Because that's not a thing anymore, you can claim it whenever you want and you get the exact same amount. You can claim it 5 minutes after we post the tree, you can claim it 5 years after we post the tree. You get the exact same amount there. So auto-claiming is going away. It has been a very contentious point of trouble for people since its sort of inception. Any of these automatic transactions is troublesome. And mostly because we run into problems with the gas estimator from Mainnet. People will submit a claim transaction that gets stuck in what we call a gas valley, where the gas estimator gives you a really low number that isn't sort of reflective of the Mainnet conditions. And then it becomes a question of, okay, how do I unstick a transaction? And we have to show you how to do that and stuff as well. So auto-claiming is just going away. Claim whenever you want, do it manually. Claim lots of intervals at the same time. It's more cost effective if you wait and claim lots of intervals at the same time, but you have the option to do that or not. A big reason why you can't do it anymore is because now you can stake at the same time as your claim. You can do all that in one atomic transaction. So if you have like, I don't know, 100 RPL to claim because you're Marceau, or he has like 10,000 RPL, but whatever. If you have a lot of RPL to claim, and you want to stake some of it without having to like claim and then get that into your wallet and then move it into your node and then stake it from there to do this multiple transaction thing. Now you can do that with Redstone. You can say, as part of the claim process, I want to restake this much RPL, and it will do that during the claim, so it happens at once. And that's much harder to manage from an automatic perspective. So I'd much rather you sort of do it manually.
All right. Question about specific client here. Where is it? Nimbus. Why can't I use a fallback if I'm using Nimbus as my beacon client?
Is that from Patches too?
They're all from Patches.
These are all from, my God, what a legend. Okay. The reason currently, and I'm going to highlight this, currently you cannot use a fallback if you have Nimbus is because in reality, when we call something a consensus client, it's really 2 pieces of software. One of them is called the beacon node, and that's the piece of software that's responsible for syncing the beacon chain and communicating with other beacon peers and keeping that going. And then the other piece is called the validator client, and that's kind of abstracted away by Rocket Pool. And the validator client is the thing that manages your mini pool keys, signs off, creates attestations, creates blocks, and submits them to the beacon clients to be included in the network. All of the other clients, including Lodestar, which I haven't even added yet, but Prism, Lighthouse, Teku, and technically Lodestar, all of them have support for this split mode, where one process can be the beacon node and one process can be the validator client. So if for some reason you need to take the beacon node offline, you can keep the validator client online and point it at an externally managed beacon node, and then everything keeps going, essentially. The reason that doesn't work with Nimbus is because currently Nimbus's beacon node and validator client are the same process. They're the same like execution engine, essentially. They can't be split into 2 separate processes, which means Nimbus's beacon node is responsible for doing all of the validation. That is, interestingly enough, I will highlight this because I didn't hear it in Patches' question, but I think it's in the spirit of it. Teku does not support fallbacks right now either. Because while Teku does have this support for being able to split one process into the beacon node and one process into the validator client, Teku's validator client doesn't let you specify multiple beacon nodes so that if one of them goes down, the other one can be picked up as a fallback. They're working on it. They told me they're working on it diligently, and they will have support soon, PM. But right now, it doesn't have that. So if you're using Teku, you don't get fallback support either. Your options are Lighthouse will let you fall back to anything, and Prism will let you fall back to Prism. And that's it, as far as fallback goes. For now. Stay tuned.
I see. Well, it's good to hear that there are some enhancements coming soon. So we have that to look forward to. Questions. We're just about out. And we did actually just clock over 1 hour. So maybe now is a good time to wrap things up.
Sure. I do have some closing notes I want to get out of the way real quick. 1/2 cup raspberries, 1/2 cup blueberries, 1/2
I
cup
mute him?
plain yogurt.
Stop him! Stop him! Stop him!
Here we go. Here we go. What was that, Joe?
Nope.
Oh,
Everything's fine.
Where'd he go?
Carry on.
Right. If you have any non-smoothie related closing comments, Joe, that would be a good time.
No, I mean, jokes about the smoothing pool aside, in all honesty, I am very excited, very, very excited about getting this Redstone update into people's hands. And I want to give a shout out to the beta testing community that's helped us on both Ropsten and Prater, constantly trying out all of the features, trying out every possible configuration and all of the options you can do. I'm still getting reports from little bugs here and there occasionally. And so I wanted you guys to know, as beta testers, I truly appreciate everything you're doing to help us make this a success. So thank you.
Well, if anyone joined this AMA late, just a reminder, it is being recorded. So we will have that up, available so you guys can catch up. I do believe that this is the first time we've hosted an event like this on Discord. So it's gone fairly smoothly, all things considered. Bit of a relief. And yeah, thanks for the 50 or so people who've tuned in. And of course, thanks to everyone up here, up on stage, Langers, Kane, Joe, Dave. Thanks for sharing your Redstone insights today. I've certainly found it very interesting, very insightful, and I'm sure everyone in the audience has as well. If there are any other closing comments, you guys, please feel free. Otherwise, we'll catch everyone on, I guess, next week's community call.
Thanks for hosting, Mev.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, Mev.
Thank you, sir.
All right, see you guys.
All right, see you, everyone.
Yeah.